Let's shut those doors, those flappy doors back there. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Representative Clouston. Hey!
The Committee of the Whole will come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House File 139, or Senate File, sorry. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 139, sponsored by Senator Kolb. Unlawful use of charge card or debit card, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 139, unlawful use of a charge card or debit card, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? He's coming. Yep. Chairman Burkhart. We called already.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 139 do pass and turn the explanation of the bill over to this good representative.
Thank you, Representative. What's that? Okay. Calling on Representative Larson. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I present to you Senate File 139, unlawful use of charge or debit card. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a bill that expands the definition of fraud as it pertains to charge cards and debit cards. Currently, a credit card is only defined in the statute, and our county attorney has asked us to bring this bill forward to just fix this loophole. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my overall question is, why are we not including gift cards? So it seems like the delineation in the bill says charge or debit, something that's owed on at the end of a month, which seems interesting, but there are other types of cards out there. So I guess my question, any discussion on why if somebody gives me a store card that's a gift credit and somebody steals that from me, we treat that differently than we would treat fraud on a debit card?
Brian. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the good representative that just spoke and from just down the street, I would just like to remind him that our good fellows on the other side of the building, you know, this concept of gift cards and stuff may be new to them. So let's take baby steps, and we'll just start with bank and debit. Thank you.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to give a more appropriate answer to the question. So I would define a gift card as cash. That's something you go into a store and you purchase. If you lose it, that's on you. These charge cards, debit cards, and credit cards are attached to your name, your social security, and so that's why the debit cards were, or gift cards were excluded from this bill.
Question have been called. All those in favor of Senate File 139, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed, say no. Okay. Senate File 139 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 88. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 88, sponsored by Travel, Hunting Licenses, Weighted Bonus Point System, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 88, Hunting Licenses, Weighted Bonus Point System, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Storer. Noes, Representative Singh, Western, Winter. Representative Newsom, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Newsom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 88 do pass. And I turn over the presentation of the bill to my good representative from House District 15.
Chairman Burkhart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I missed it. I will, if it wasn't moved, I will move the standing committee amendment at this time. Okay. So I move the standing committee amendment 1 to Senate File 88. Ask for your favorable consideration. This amendment was brought by our good department. Asked that we make this change. It just clarifies some of the language, and I would ask for your aye vote on the amendment.
Question being called on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Amendment carries. We're back on the bill. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So ladies and gentlemen, Senate File 88 is the hunting license weighted bonus point system bill. Where this bill comes from is for the last 18 months, we've had a task force who has looked at numerous game and fish issues statewide. Statewide task force, I forget how many members were on that, a dozen and a half, maybe even more, from a broad spectrum throughout the state. Come up with recommendations to address game and fish issues, one of them being hunting license and mainly the point system that's currently in place. Out of that discussion, in looking at the point system, which for some people has been very welcome, for other people very hated, and they came up with a solution to ultimately eliminate the point system in favor of the system they have, and at the same time take care of those people who have accumulated numerous points. Now, the way you get points, mainly for sheep and well, ram, bighorn sheep, and moose, is that you're unsuccessful in the drawing. And each year you're unsuccessful, you get a point. If you don't even apply, you can buy a point. And there are people out there who have accumulated quite a few points in the system. And sure, they would like to have a license. But at the same time that more and more people have been accumulating points, our game populations have been declining. So you have a declining product and an increasing demand, which leads to a lot of unhappiness among people, especially hunters. I mean, everybody wants that coveted bighorn sheep license. I'd still like another one, just be blunt about it. So this was the recommendation of the people on that committee, on that task force. They've looked at systems throughout the country. There is no perfect system, I'll tell you that right now. What they did find is that they determined this was probably the most practical system and probably the most equitable system they could come up with. So I'll take you through the bill. Most of the bill is to add the term bonus point throughout game and fish statutes. And then the majority come in on page 4, 5, and 6, where the old system is eliminated in favor of this bonus point system. And the way the system will work is those people who have points already, they'll be put in the drawing, but their number of points will be squared, multiplied by itself to give them a little added advantage on drawing a license. And that was what they came up with as an equitable way to do this. Now, people will tell you that this system will help the kids. It's for our children. Well, when you already have someone who has 25 points and you have a child who's 12 years old and starts and gets their first point, just do the math. They'll be about 90 years old before they accumulate enough points to draw a license. You're better off for those people just entering the pool of points if it was a random selection. The statistics aren't that good for those people. So this is what they came up with. That's kind of it in a nutshell. The rest is conforming language as you go through here, and this system applies only to moose and ram bighorn sheep. And I can tell you, this is not an easy task. I looked at bills about 5 years ago on this, and I came to a conclusion that the only way you could really do it easily was just to eliminate the points, and those who had many points, you were out of luck, including myself. So that's the bill in a nutshell. Stand for questions, discussion, and it's a game and fish bill about licenses, so it should be a robust discussion.
Speaker Summers?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to say that, I served on the Wildlife Task Force, and this was an idea that came out of there nearly unanimously. I was not one that voted for the bill. I just want to make everybody clear on that. I think there were only 2 no votes in the task force on it, and I was one of them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I really do appreciate all the effort that the task force put into this. No matter how you slice it, this issue about what are we going to do about these rams, the quota to hunt them, is a serious issue. Now, I need to give this some more context. In this room, there's only about 4 people who have hunted rams or accumulating points to rams. So I appreciate that some of you might not fully appreciate why this is a really, really big deal. Wyoming has a lot of amazing traditions, agriculture, mining, et cetera. Another one of those great ones is hunting. And in the hunting world, there is no greater success, no higher honor, more desirable hunt than that of a bighorn ram. So in the hunting world, that's why this is a really, really big deal. And because there's such a low supply of rams and such a high demand to hunt them, these tags are so important. And that's why these once-in-a-lifetime tags. So that underscores the emphasis of why this is so important. This bill specifically is trying to solve a problem that I think is coming. And that is that as more people continue to apply to accumulate these points, those odds of them drawing are eventually going down. So right now in the top point kind of tier, if you have 20 plus points, meaning you've been waiting for 20 plus years to draw this tag, there's roughly 150 to 200 people in your point accumulation cohort who have as many points as you. But if you look down that bracket to the folks who are accumulating 1, 2, 3, 4 points, et cetera, it's thousands of people. So eventually when those people graduate up to where they have that 20 point plus bracket, the odds go down because the supply remains the same, but the demand to hunt them goes way up. Henceforth, your odds of drawing go way down. And I appreciate that that is a problem and it does need to be addressed. But as written, there's some serious problems with this bill. And specifically, it's this. If you look at it, the effective date is 2027. The problem is this. Right now, there is a group of people, roughly 400 or 500 folks, who have been waiting in line for decades, who upon the effective date, their draw odds of these drawing one of these tags go from roughly 100% draw odds down to less than 20. If our job is to try to enact fair legislation, I don't think that's it. So these folks, again, who have got, by the time the effective date rolls around, who have graduated into that top tier class of point holders, who have been waiting in line, all of a sudden are told to be going from the front of the line, where their draw odds are near guaranteed, to the back of the line or near the back of the line, where their draw odds are less than 20. That's the problem with this bill right now. By the time the effective date, you might be asking how many people will this actually affect who've been waiting in line for all those years. It's about 500 people. And asking them to go from, say, 100% draw odds to 70% in the name of fairness, that's a tough pill to swallow, but to try to fix the problem, it's worth it. What is not okay is asking them to go from 100% draw odds to less than 20. They've spent 20 plus years accumulating a point a year, trying to do the right thing and wait in line with everybody else. And all of a sudden their draw odds go from a hunt where it's basically guaranteed to now they have no idea. It could be decades before they draw it again. And the problem is this. The idea is that if you have those amount of bonus points, when this system goes into effect, the idea is, well, I have so many points, those points get squared, higher draw odds in theory of me drawing because I have more points than the people who have much less. What this bill does is it takes those stratified draw classes, meaning Game and Fish, or the agency allocates 4 or 5 tags for those people who have those high points, and so on and so forth down, where they eventually don't allocate any tags for people who have less than, usually it's 19 points. What this bill does is it takes all those points, or all those tags, into one giant pool. So instead of you up against your people who also have a bunch of points, it's you against everybody who has points. And that's where you see those draw odds go down. Because if you're applying, say for Area 4, up there near the park, near Yellowstone Park in the southeast portion of the park, 3 or 4 people will be applying who have 20, 22 points. And that's great. But there's going to be 100 to 120 people who are applying that have, say, 8 to 12 points. Because by what's called application crowd out, meaning you may have 22 points, but because there's so many more people applying with less points, your odds go way, way, way down. And that's the concern that bothers me, and I think that's why I submit to you all, is that those people who are asking to go to the back of the line, that's in essence what the problem is because their draw odds go way down because so many more applicants are crowding them out and subsequently reducing their draw odds. You'll see that there's an amendment that I have drafted up, and Mr. Chairman, I would like to move the amendment at this time. It says Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 88. I believe this amendment, it doesn't necessarily fix the problem, but it makes it a lot more fair. And so I know there's, it's kind of a long amendment, there's a lot going on there, but in essence what it's doing is trying to make that more fair for those people who will be those high point holders at the time this law goes into effect. How does this amendment work and how does it do that? It simply says by the time, for a period of 6 years after the effective date, those high point holders who have been waiting for 20 some years, when you go into the bonus point system, your points get cubed. Everybody else gets squared, but yours get cubed. And the effect is that amplifies the amount of points you have and henceforth the likelihood of you drawing. So again, if you can, I'm happy to walk through the amendment. You can see, for example, right there at the bottom, if you have 25 points or greater, your applicants are then cubed, and then that number is then multiplied by 2.2. Again, because there's so few of you, and to combat that crowd out effect, this puts you in a position where when you go into that draw, you have much more likely odds. A reasonable question would be, well, how much does this increase their draw odds? It depends on the area, but it adds about another 30 to 50% on how, depending on the area and how many applicants for their draw odds. So they're going from 20 to 30 to 50% plus. Not totally fair. We're still taking away their opportunity for a guaranteed draw, but at least we're giving them a better chance to have that once in a lifetime tag. So that's the amendment in essence. Again, I'm more than happy to answer questions. If not, I will call for the question.
Question on the amendment. Chairman Burkhardt? No?
No question on the amendment, but I'd like to speak on it, Mr. Chairman.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, what this amendment does is creates, in effect, 2 lines of calculations now on the license. And it starts at 18 years, or 18 points, however you want to look at it, and goes up. You could do this by moving it to 17 or 19 or another way. It creates 2 sets of calculations for the department that they will have to administer and keep track of. Additionally, it complicates these calculations and I just don't really think it works. And I'll be blunt about it. Based on the color of my hair, I probably have more points than anybody else in the room. And I think that the original bill is a better way to go. And maybe my odds would be better with the amendment, but I think we need to do what's equitable, clean, easy to administer for all the people of the state, not just those who have a lot of points.
Speaker Summers?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And somebody came up to me and said, well, you said you didn't support this bill or this idea, but you didn't say why. And I think the why was articulated really well by the bringer of this amendment. You get out there 5 years and then you have a disparity on people that have these points for a long time. So that was my challenge with the bill. I think the amendment helps. I think there's other ways to do this as well, but this was one of those issues where we, in the task force, went around and around. There's lots of different ideas. There's a 75-25 split. So on top of all this, remember only 75% of the tags are in this preference point draw. 25% of the tags are random. So a young person has a chance, a very small chance, but they have a chance. The methodology I preferred was just to go to a 50-50. So you'd get to put a little more into the random, but you would respect those point holders. I'm telling you, there's lots of ways to cut this. I probably am going to vote for this amendment, but it is really a challenging problem. So thank you.
Representative Banks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo the words that the good speaker just said. I'm not necessarily in favor of this bill. I think there's a lot of other ways we can go about it. I would support also the 50-50 thing. But if we're gonna go this route with this bill, then I rise in support of this amendment because it allows those people who have set aside their time and efforts and money to buy these points the ability to still have a chance to get that tag, whereas if we go without the amendment, they lose that. They lose 20 years worth of those points to be able to get that once-in-a-lifetime tag. So if we're going to talk about equity and making it fair for both groups, the new people putting into the system as well as the people who have used the current system, if we're going to go forward with this bill, then I recommend an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd say I'm pretty envious of those that have those banked up points, right? It's a pretty gluttonous amount of points, to be honest with you. You're swimming around in them. And when you've got that many points and you're able to accumulate those, we don't want to take them away. It's something that you should be prideful about. And so I think when we get to the point of, when we're looking at this particular amendment, I think it helps the bill. I really do. But I'm probably never going to get that bighorn sheep, right? I'm never going to get that draw. But if I do, I'm going to bring the holy wrath of my rifle down on it. And it's going to be because that mountain, is going to have that sheep sitting up there, and he can be moving slower than a sloth. And I'm going to do everything in my power to take him down. But I think what ultimately is the problem here is you've got a lot of people lusting very much so for these points. And I agree that as the good speaker just mentioned here, this helps the bill. But I'm not sure that it makes the bill palatable to me. And I think I got all 7. Thank you.
Representative Harrelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things that I think we need to keep in mind here is we have that large group of higher preference point people. And what we have is on this curve. So I was in the interim committee as we talked about this. On this curve, this large group of people are sliding up together to where we have obviously more tags than we have rams or moose. But what you have to understand is under this new system, there is the potential that that one incredibly lucky kid on his first draw pulls a tag, which great for the kid. But how do you feel when you're 25 points into this game and don't draw and the kid does? That's the issue. But now on the flip side, there's a very good chance if we don't go this route, I'm playing devil's advocate from both sides because we saw both sides of this. If you don't go with this route, my 12-year-old son, there's a good chance he'll never draw a ram tag in the state of Wyoming. Like, there's a good chance he'll never be able to make that happen. And so where's the point where we have this experience to be able to go into our high country after a prize, a trophy animal that our kids will never be able to do? So that's why they brought this concept. So you got two sides. You got the side where there's the potential for a kid to draw a tag. Is that right? That's your call. Is that right that he jumps past all those other people because he got to be lucky? And I live in a high draw or a harder to draw elk area, and there are those people that I swear they're gonna win that tag or they're gonna draw that tag their first time putting in because that's the reality of their luck. But on the flip side, do we owe it to our kids to put this in? I'm just giving you guys both sides, and this is the battle we fought in the interim on this concept. But if you're not careful, what you create is you create those people that have been standing behind those points for so long that will not have the opportunity to ever draw this tag. So just throwing out some ideas. I'm not going to tell you how to vote on it. I'm just telling you both sides of it and thought I'd bring that in.
Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I do know that I've never drawn a tag in this state that I've never not been entered in. So it's a chance. And I wasn't for the bonus when I was young, and I'm not, or the point system, and I wasn't for the bonus. I didn't think that was best for what we needed for Wyoming. Right now, I've studied the interim. I looked at all the conversations, and either way, is there an extra advantage? Either way we go, I don't see it. But I do like this amendment if we're going to vote on this bill, and I appreciate the good bringer of this amendment for thinking about this one. This is not easy. But again, I haven't drawn a tag that I haven't been entered in. I do know that.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on the bill and against the amendment. Back in the day, when we didn't say back in the day, we said in the old days. In the old days, my first permit was for $5 and it was for a moose. And I was so excited that I missed. But I just want to say that buying these points is a choice. And if you have been buying them year after year and you've accumulated them and they change the policy, then I think we have to have a mechanism for a fair and equitable transition to the new policy. I think the bill is pretty close. So I would vote no on the amendment, aye on the bill.
Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern all along has been we need to take care of these folks that have been spending money on these preference points all these years. But I don't believe that this amendment or the preference point system or the bonus point system is going to do the job. And so our speaker explained his position on it, and I think he's absolutely right. I don't know much about statistics, but we've been playing games with this whole effort for many, many years, and switching to a bonus point is no better than what we have already. There's a lot of hunters that have been working with these different states who have the bonus point system, and they say that it's just as bad as a preference point. It just, you start playing games with these things and it just never works out the way you hope. But I've been very fortunate. I've had 2 sheep licenses, a moose license, and a grizzly bear license. But I guess I'm lucky. But we need to go back to an interim topic, I think, and figure out a different way to take care of these folks in a shorter period of time, and then just go back to a random draw. So thank you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. My brother and I both grew up here in Wyoming, and he has hunted every year now for over 45 years. In those years, he has bought deer tags, he's bought bear, he's bought elk consistently every year, and then put in for preference points. And ultimately, just this last year, he got his ram. I, on the other hand, chose to do other things and I didn't put in, and so I'll never get one, much as I would love that. But the reason that I rise today is just to talk about there are people who have for many, many years invested in this, dreamt of it, put into it, have supported Wyoming in hunting by buying tags for just about everything else for very many years. And it just seems to me that this is a relatively fair way. There is no perfect way, but it's a relatively fair way to transition between what we have now and what we're going to have. And it is pretty much a lottery, but again, on and for the amendment.
Chairwoman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify a few things. Number one, this is just for bighorn rams and just for moose. So it has nothing to do with elk or antelope or any of those deer, any of those other species. It is just for moose and bighorn sheep. Bighorn rams. So the other thing is, if you currently have preference points above 20, the implementation of this change is pushed out till 2027 in order to give those folks who have those large amount of preference points to draw within the same system. On the other hand, if you have fewer points, if you have 20 points, those points are then squared. So you have 400 entries into the lottery system, where a newer hunter would have 1. So it gives you a better chance. If you have 400 entries into the lottery or 1 entry into the lottery, you have a better chance of drawing. And that happens after the implementation of this bill in 2027, after those really high point people are all taken care of. On the amendment, this complicates what is already a complicated system, complicates it even further, makes it even harder to understand and even harder to explain to people. It complicates it for the commission and for the agency to run the numbers this way. So I am against the amendment for the bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this amendment? Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, we've all kind of heard that this is a really complicated issue and that there are no easy answers. And the problem remains no matter what we do. Again, I think it's those folks over the next 4 years who, by the time of the effective date of this act, will be at the very front of the line, who've waited over 20 years, and who all of a sudden are going to be shown all the way to the back of the line or near the back of the line. So I think this amendment just simply tries to help those people and give them that opportunity. The department can handle this. They've got the ability, the software to manage these types of systems. There are other more complicated ones out there that are managed. So I think they absolutely have the capability. And ask for the question if there are no further discussions.
Question being called on Standing Committee of the Whole, Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 88. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, say aye. Opposed, say no. Senate File, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 88 fails. Division being called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 88, please stand. Okay. Thank you. All those opposed, please stand. Less than 37. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 88 passes. Is there any other discussion on the bill? Is there a second? Oh, sorry. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to Senate File 88.
Chairman, I respectfully withdraw my Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to Senate File 88.
Thank you. Is there any other further discussion on the bill, Senate File 88? Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we heard last testimony, we're talking about the amendment. Well, this is better, but it's not great. I don't think we should pass things out of this body that are better but not great. I think as some previous speakers have said, we can do something better. So I would encourage a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Chairwoman Newsom.
Chairman, on and in favor of this bill. This has been a long time coming, and the preference point system as it stands now is not workable into the future. This is an attempt to make a system that is better, and I would disagree. I think every day in this body we do good, but we don't expect perfect. There's going to be no perfect solution to this problem, but this is a solution that has been worked by the task force for many, many months with hundreds of hours given to this effort. So I would suggest an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairwoman Newsom's motion that when Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with recommendation that Senate File 88 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. Senate File 88 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File, oh, sorry, we have a privilege of the floor. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Members, today we're honored with visitors from Uzbekistan. We have 3 members of parliament. If you'd stand and look in the West Gallery, these are members of parliament, MPs from Uzbekistan. We have Jahangir, Mavduda, and Sherzad. These fine members have been visiting the Cheyenne area. They are with the Congressional Office for International Leadership. They're in Cheyenne for this week, learning more about our governance, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for visiting and being at our people's house. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 10. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 10, sponsored by Labor, Licensed Professional Counselor Compact, an act relating to professions and occupations. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 10, Licensed Professional Counselor Compact, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clauston, O'Hearn, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Hornock, Penn, Trujillo, Ward. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My pleasure is when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so the recommendation that Senate File 10 do pass. I've moved that Senate file and move the Standing Committee amendment. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, the Standing Committee amendment is an LSO caught a citation reference that needed to be inserted into the bill, so it shouldn't be controversial. I would just ask for the question on the Standing Committee amendment at this time.
Question being called on Standing Committee Amendment number 1 is Senate File 10. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Chairman Zwanitzer.
And I would turn over the floor management of the bill to the good representative from District 32.
Representative Clauston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, this is just another simple 68-page bill. Another one of the compacts. So we had 2 compacts presented us to our committee the other day. We had the one that we've previously spent a lot of time on with the psychologist in committee that did have a few people that had concerns. This one is dealing with the mental health counselor compacts, and we did not have anybody speak against this. Currently, 17 states are members of this compact, and 18 other states right now have this language in front of them for legislation. Points of this, remember, people can opt in. It's not required. It does not change our statutes or our laws or our local requirements. You know, we have a shortage of counselors in Wyoming. I checked in our school district. We have over 80 kids right now waiting for mental health counselors' evaluations. So this would allow more mental health counselors to practice in Wyoming. It would also allow you to cover your patients as they travel out of state, whether that be for school or military or work. So I'm going to ask here for your aye on the bill. It's similar to other compacts, just this one didn't have anybody speak against it. I'll stand for questions.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call the body's attention to page 11 and 12. On page 11, line 12, it says, to participate in the compact, a state must currently, and if you skip to line 21, require licensees to have a 60 semester hour or 90 quarter hour master's degree in counseling or semester hours of graduate coursework, including the following topic areas. I'm now on page 12. Line 7, B, says social and cultural diversity. Some examples of classes in social and cultural diversity include unconscious bias, teachings on oppressor versus the oppressed, and one race being valued above another. For that reason, I would like to encourage a no vote on this bill.
Representative Minority Floor Leader Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that type of training is something that's already required for a counselor's license in our current licensing regime. Counselors need to know this so they can relate to their patients. So you need to be able to understand the culture that your patient comes from so you can have that relationship. I do want to highlight that we're in a mental health crisis in the state of Wyoming, and anything that can give us more access to counselors is a good thing. So I ask you to vote for the bill.
Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding of what counselors should be is open-minded, and these courses that they have to take allow them to be open-minded to all different types of life. So I think that that we should support this bill and ask for your aye vote.
Representative Clauston. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer. Oh, I was just a little too quick. Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll jump up quicker next time. Apologize for that. Just wanted to read the statute regarding these current individuals we're talking about right now. 3338-108 says, any individual holding a license in good standing to engage in the practice of professional counseling, clinical social work, marriage and family therapy, or addiction therapy under the laws of another state having licensure requirements substantially similar to those required by this act, may, upon approval of the board, be issued a license to practice in this state. So just want to say that it is not very hard for out-of-state people to come work in this state if they meet our current level of qualifications. So I'm not necessarily sure that we need to have the, we need to put these people under a compact that is not, that we don't necessarily have much control over here within this state with our licensing board. So anyway, just take that into consideration, and I would recommend a no vote on this bill. Thanks.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 10 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. Senate File 10 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 7. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 7, sponsored by Senator Baldwin. Definition of opiate antagonist amendment, an act relating to public health and safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 7, engrossed. Definition of opiate antagonist amendment, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Hornock, Ward. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
Sorry, just getting settled here. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
I move in the committee of the whole rise to report it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 7 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I would turn over management of the bill to the good Vice Chairman of Appropriations.
Vice Chairman Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we created the section in Title 35 for emergency administration of opioid antagonists to help as they develop the new medication we refer to as Narcan. As we've seen increasing overdoses of opioids, this was just a huge development in saving lives. The antagonists, when they found somebody that had overdosed, they could, I think it's nasal, that they apply this and has saved a lot of lives. Well, they've continued to work on the chemical and the molecules that this derivative is from, and our statutes really spell out that there's just the one that we can only use Narcan. And so this amendment, or the change in this bill, is that an opioid antagonist means any device or medication approved by the United States Food and Drug Administration for the treatment of opioid-related drug overdoses. Now, it's really important, folks, that it's that simple, but it's important to remember that it's for overdose, not for the treatment of addiction. And I think some of the conversation that was heard in committee was that perhaps this might loosen up or soften and allow for the use of marijuana in this action. And what we've learned in the conversation is that marijuana is used on the addiction side, but not on the treatment of overdose side. Two different things. And so we've kind of looked at that and studied it. Would encourage with all, we talk about the fentanyl overdoses that we're seeing, that in having these type of
of drugs to fight these overdoses are really important. Has nothing to do with any marijuana-type derivatives. It's just for this overdose antagonist, so I'd encourage an aye vote.
Okay. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitser's motion that when Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with recommendation that Senate File Number 7 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Senate File 7 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 37. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 37, sponsored by Senator Baldwin. Podiatry, Medical Services, Medicaid, an act relating to Medical Assistance and Services Act. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 37 engrossed, Podiatry, Medical Services, Medicaid, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, O'Hearn, Trujillo, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Hornock, Penn, Ward. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a different chairman every time I present today. I move in the Committee of the Whole rise to report to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 37 do pass. I would further move the Standing Committee amendment, and I'm going to do a rarity and ask you to vote no on the Standing Committee amendment. So just to explain what's going on a little bit with the bill and the Standing Committee amendment, this is exactly the same portion of law where we're allowing pharmacists for that Medicaid reimbursement. And so if you look in the pharmacist bill that's going to be on third reading tomorrow, they're already in adding a section 37. And so what the Standing Committee amendment did is try to add a section 38 because we didn't want to conflict. After discussion with LSO, if you actually look in our manual of procedures, LSO has the power and the responsibility that if two bills both pass that hit the exact same statute and a new Romanette to move them around on their own. And so we were unaware of that in committee, but now found that out. And so that Standing Committee amendment is no longer needed. Would ask you to vote no on the Standing Committee amendment at this time, even though I do believe it was a good chairman's motion. I hope he's also satisfied this is no longer needed. So please vote no on the Standing Committee amendment.
You've heard the motion on the Standing Committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? Question having been called. All those in favor, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The Standing Committee amendment number 1 has failed. We are back on the bill. Representative Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So pretty much the same conversation that we had on pharmacists. This is another place where you have to add providers into the authorized services and supplies category to get Medicaid reimbursement for services. Podiatrists did not have this capability. And I'm double checking, there's a Committee of the Whole amendment as well. I didn't realize till just now that it's going to be provided. So let the sponsor bring that amendment, and I'll get back to explanation of the bill after that Committee of the Whole amendment.
Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a busy day. So I'm going to ask for your favorable consideration as I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 37. You know, when we heard in testimony, one of the reasons to bring podiatrists onto this was to add to the care for diabetic care. Arizona had podiatry with Medicaid, and then they took it off. And they found when they took it off, their number of amputations and their hospitalizations went up. So they studied it, and by taking podiatry off from their diabetic care with their Medicaid patients, they spent $44 more for every $1 they had been spending. So now Arizona's put podiatry back on. What my amendment is from concerns that I've heard from physicians and from hospitals. In that the way this is currently written, it covers all Medicaid patients. My amendment would say after services, for persons under 18 years of age or older, or if referred to a podiatrist by a physician. So the concern being here is we don't want to expand podiatry to all Medicaid patients, especially the children. So my amendment would only handle adults unless a physician has already seen this child and said, we need a podiatrist to look at this person. So I'm going to ask for your favorable consideration, your aye vote on the amendment as well as on the bill. Thank you.
We are on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. Question being called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a lot more to say on the bill besides that really are trying to target a population. A lot of this population also has, I think, diabetes, I can say that, and they're at high risk of foot care. And so all of the testimony in this area was that any of the prevention we can do saves us a heck of a lot of money in the long run before, you know, bad things happen like an amputation may be necessary. So certainly believe it's a quality bill and would ask for your support.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted no in committee, and I wanted to urge a no vote on the floor. The reason being that this expands Medicaid.
Is there any other discussion on the bill? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the previous speaker from front mentioned, we save $44 for every dollar we spend, and it's mostly for diabetic patients. They don't have feeling in their feet, and if you're over 18 of age, like the guy in front said, this really helps. So we pay a little now, and we save a whole lot of money later. On for the bill.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear that this doesn't expand Medicaid. What we say on this floor matters, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to be clear that what we're doing is we're reimbursing doctors for the care that they're providing patients that is otherwise going unfunded right now and being written off by hospitals as bad debt or as being sent over to collections and being collected on, 5-10 cents on the dollar that's being billed for. These doctors are providing the care. All we're doing is providing a mechanism for them to recuperate the costs for the care that they've gone to school for to provide to these patients. This is not an expansion of Medicaid.
Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File number 37 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate File 37 has passed Committee of the Whole. Division having been called, all those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. Less than 36. Senate File 37 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 40. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 40, sponsored by Senator Case. Federal Political Action Committees reports, an act relating to campaign practices. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 40, Federal Political Action Committees reports. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harshman, Newsom, Olson, Wiley, Yin. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Knapp, Ottman. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 40 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I'll turn over the explanation to one of the co-sponsors, the good chairman of Health and Labor.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleased to present House or Senate File 40 to the body. So what this deals with is filing of campaign reports when you run for office. So whether you're, all of us had to file these reports as well as all of the political action committees. And so we had an interesting situation this year, and I think we've had it before, and we've just never addressed it. But when you have federal PACs, so you either file as a state PAC or a federal PAC to support candidates for state office or for federal office. We did have a PAC that was supporting a federal candidate in this state, and it was filed appropriately with the Federal Election Commission. But as part of their campaigning, they did endorse or support other candidates down ballot for state level races here in Wyoming. They then did not file any type of report at the state level because they're a federal PAC. And so what this bill attempts to do is clarify that language, that if you are a federal PAC and you're only supporting federal candidates, you don't have to file or report anything at the state of Wyoming level. But if you do support any state candidates as part of that federal political action committee, the state of Wyoming also gets to know that you exist and how much money in aggregate, or as close as you can get to what you spent, helping endorse or campaign for state level candidates. So happy to answer any questions, but it was just one of those, I think, inconsistencies in our laws, and we're always trying to keep our campaign finance and disclosure laws on par and make sure everything is transparent and accountable. And so this is just one more step to ensure the transparency exists if any federal PACs are donating to candidates or helping state level or city or municipal or county candidates in our state.
Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a concern that came up in my community because there was just a couple of women that put together a PAC because they wanted to gather funds from people that they worked with and have a bigger voice, if you will, in the elections. And so they had decided that they would support, as the bringer of the bill mentioned, a federal candidate. So they had to do a federal PAC, which requires reporting at the federal level, which has a different date time frame than ours does at the state level. They do it quarterly, whereas we do it just before the election and then sometime after the election, or just before each the primary and the general election. And so what this would do, this bill would require that they would continue to report at the federal level and then also report at the state level. I don't think it's terribly onerous to make them do that, but I would say that the big money donors and the big out-of-state PACs, they're going to have agents that allow them to cover all these reporting requirements, whereas the little groups in our communities that are becoming politically active that we want to encourage, they're going to be required to do more reporting. And so I just think it's probably onerous for those types of people. And if we want to keep encouraging that grassroots level involvement in our elections, I think that this bill is the wrong way to do that. So on and against the bill.
Question being called? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer's motion that when Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so the recommendation that Senate File 40 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Senate File 40 is passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 43. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 43, sponsored by Senator Case, EMS districts, an act relating to improvement and service districts. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 43 engrossed, EMS districts, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harshman, Newsom, Wiley, Yin. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Knapp, Olson, Ottman. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 43 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I'll turn over the explanation of the bill to the good representative from the county, which is free.
Vice Chairman Larson?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the House, this is a bill that really a result of a statewide effort through the Chief Executive Office. There was a statewide health task force that was created a couple of years ago. And one of the top priorities that they wanted to look at is how can we secure or reinforce ambulance services in our counties. Many of our counties were faced with very tight budgets and ambulance services were being threatened. We had a number of private ambulance services that sold, and counties were concerned on how that was going to play out. As that whole process went forward, it was a statewide effort to look and come up with ideas, and they divided the state into regions and to try and come up with an idea of how the state could fund ambulance services. And as we met in my county, in my region, we thought that that approach was a little bit flawed in that it really is a local control issue more than a statewide responsibility to fund ambulance services. And so then the concern was, how do we get that done? How can we work to do that? And as we was contemplating that, we were at the same time dealing with a solid waste district. And the way we create, so there's two ways you can create a special district in the state. One is that you come to the county commissioners with a petition to create a district. And if you have the correct number of signatures on that, and then you can take that to a vote, and it can be adopted with a mill levy. And so the creation of the district and the implementation of the mill is done through that election process. The second way is that the commissioners, your county commissioners, can establish a board by resolution. For example, on a solid waste district, you could create a board by resolution. The board could meet, determine an appropriate levy to operate that solid waste district, and then the people within the district have to vote to impose that mill. So either way, the people vote whether to impose a mill levy on their property tax or not. And so I think what we thought was a good approach to this was to create an emergency medical district similar to what we've done with solid waste districts. And we go into the statutes where emergency medical districts can be created by virtue of a resolution where, if adopted, the mill levy is adopted at the same time the election takes place. And then we create in here, if you look at page 2 of the bill, that you can establish that you can create a emergency medical district, and by the Board of Commissioners can create this emergency medical district. And then in this bill, we say with the ability to consider 2 meals with a maximum of 4 meals, because that's what emergency medical districts currently are allowed. But that mill cannot be adopted without a vote of the people. Now, there was some concern yesterday, I believe, when this bill was heard in committee that, and if you read the bill, it's a little bit difficult, and I'll share with you how we get there. But there was some concern that if the commissioners do that, they get to automatically impose a 2 mill. and they do not. And so it has to be, and where you find that in the bill is, if I can find it in the bill, is if you go to page 6, the new language on the top of, on lines 4, 5, and 6 refer to a district created in 1812-105A. That's the type that's created by a resolution, boom, and then they vote. Or the second one is to create a district formed by 1812-105B, which is the one created by the commissioners, where the public has to come back and vote and decide whether a mill is imposed or not. So the thought of this emergency medical district, medical emergency system district, is that if people want ambulance services, it should be for them to, it's a local control thing. And so if you need emergency medical services in your county, they create this, and the people think that it has value, they'll vote to fund it. If they don't think it has value, they won't fund it. And that's the type of control that I believe, and I think this body really feels, that determines how these mills should be imposed and for why they should be imposed. So as we then took this idea out back to the task force and went to counties on the eastern side of the state, northeastern, and up in the central, the commissioners who oversee these in the county really like the option of being able to create an emergency medical services district and then allow the people to determine if they were going to fund it or not. That's the intent of this bill, hoping to provide our counties throughout the state an opportunity to provide these services that we think are just really struggling right now. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Representative Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As was pointed out, the bill does pave the way for more county-level taxes. It does give the people the right to vote on it, but it does pave the way for more taxes. It gives EMS districts powers to levy and collect taxes on the people of the county. Because the bill paves the way for more taxes, I urge a no vote.
Representative Stith?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On and in support of Senate File 43. I think most people, when they dial 911 and ask for an ambulance, they expect the ambulance to arrive. Ambulance service is an essential service, but it turns out in rural areas in particular, the ambulance service is a bad business because of low volume, and so it tends to be that the cost of running the service outweigh the revenue that you collect from the people that you pick up. Right now, we don't have a sustainable funding mechanism for ambulance service for emergency medical services. This bill provides a structure for that. It preserves the voters' right to approve it, and so on balance, I think this is a good solution to the problem we have with our current ambulance service, where our providers often threaten to not show up. On and for. Thank you.
Representative Davis.
Mr. Chairman, my question is, we're carving out a special way of doing this, but doesn't that already exist in Wyoming to build these special districts? I mean, in our community down there, it's small, but we went ahead and taxed ourselves and created a medical, and then that's how we fund our ambulance system, is through that. So that's my only question is this really needed, or are the tools already out there for us?
Representative Wiley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the good speaker that just spoke, I would like to go to that point. You talked about a tool. That's exactly what this is a tool. In my community, my county, very, very large county, We've tried to privatize. We went from multiple to one now. We have I-80 that runs through the center of our county from east to west. Probably the most interstate that any one county has in it in the state. And we're having this issue of these EMS services being available. And that goes from Wamsutter to Farson, from Bear Oil over to Granger. And it's expensive to have these services. And like the good speaker from my county already said, this isn't profitable for private companies. So we continue to have these issues of funding and not be able to fund and having to cut. Well, the great thing about this bill is our constituents get to say whether they want this or not. If they don't want the taxation, they can say no. But I would suggest that you be in favor of this. It's a good thing, and it will provide that emergency service when you pick up the phone and you really need it.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple things I want to talk about as we sat yesterday in committee and heard testimony on this. One of the things that was brought forward is there's only a couple counties in the state that whenever these decisions are made by voters, that they're the ones actually going to pay that lion's share. The other counties, the vote is not going to actually go, and the funding's not going to go to the actual people that are voting. It's going to go to our mineral industries. It's going to put another potentially up to 4 mills on our mineral industry. So that's something you have to consider. That this is going to continue to put a tax burden on those mineral industries, and we are the state we are financially because of them. We would not be where we're at educationally. We're not where we're at in our permanent funds if it wasn't for them. But it is something that's going to stand out that we have to understand is in a lot of these counties that these decisions are made. The main bulk of that up to 4 mil, 2 to 4 mil tax burden will fall upon these industries who don't have a say in that. They just have to saddle up to another tax. I do appreciate the fact that this doesn't sit in the commissioner's hands to actually bring that tax. This comes by the vote, which is a good thing. But one of the things we kept hearing as we heard from these EMS industries that were testifying, I heard it in 3 different conversations yesterday, and it was this: Medicaid and Medicare have made it so that we cannot continue to keep our doors open. I'm gonna reiterate that. Medicaid and Medicare, the point of that is what they're being paid back by these federal programs is so low that they cannot stay competitive. If you go to a lot of the different places that are offering services in the state, you'll see that come up. And so the question that we have is, and I'm just going to run this out in the realm of, let's walk this out and think this through. So we have a problem where the amount of finances that we can expect out of these programs for services rendered are not at level of what services cost. So now we have to potentially put a tax in place to offset and to create the solution. So are we creating a problem to create a solution? And at the end of the day, I have to ask the question, where do we stop? Where do we stop? So the volunteer EMS days, are they over? Possibly they are. So private industry, we heard $2.1 million for a certain county to make that happen. That is outrageous. But the question is it a point where is it our job to turn around and create another tax potential to fix the problem? Because at the end of the day, we won't be able to continue to fix problems. In my prior life as a mechanic, we had that series of time where we had to shut things down because from what we could hear, there was a problem inside. We would do a thing called limp it along. We'd limp it along until we had to actually do some serious maintenance. You guys, there's some serious maintenance coming down the pike if we don't want to continue down the path that we're seeing across the rest of this nation. Because the same thing over and over again is not going to give us a different result. So can we put this in place, give our counties the ability to do up to a 4 mil tax increase? Yeah, we could do that. We could continue to offset our problem with high property taxes by increasing potential property taxes. Does that mean that we're the one doing it? No, but we are putting the trigger in place to make that become reality. When you call 911, should an ambulance show up? Yeah, I think that's an option. That's something that we all want. But at the same time, people need to also understand that that's not something they get if they want to continue to do what they're doing and the path we're going on. So the question is, again, I say this a lot, policy. We have to ask a policy question now. Do we want to continue to increase these other areas, which in turn decrease the EMS and these other places' ability to fund or not? So I'm definitely, I was against it in committee. I'm against it on the floor. I believe that this is not the answer to potentially increase another tax to make this become a reality. I believe that we need to actually ask the question that what in the long run is the answer, and I don't believe this is it.
Representative Hornock?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So who can say no to ambulance service, right? But here's what is also an underlying problem with what's going on here. Currently, our system, in order to set up a special district, you have to have 60% of the people in that area file a petition, go to the county commissioners to set up the special district, which essentially will tax themselves. If I want to have better service for something, I can go to my neighbors, I can develop that petition, I can get buy-in for that, and have 60% of everybody around me file for the special petition and set up this special district, and then we can, through that, go to the commissioners, and then a tax is levied. I can have better service for my area, for our areas, for whatever area we're talking about, any district. Now, this is creating sort of a backdoor in some way, because now we don't do that with a petition going to the county commissioners. We're going to open the door to be able for the county commissioners to be able to just set it up and then go to the people and say, do you want to tax yourself for this? Yes or no? So it's kind of creating a backdoor for some of these services to fund some of these services. If that's the way you think it should go, fine. But I would recommend that we keep with the current system. We let the people come develop the petitions to set up these special districts, rather than having the district set up and they go to a vote of whether or not they want to tax themselves for this extra district that was just set up, and they had 60 days, maybe they missed the 60-day window to have public comment. I think that we're sort of we're opening a back door for this special district. If people do want those special districts in certain areas for better services, they are going to petition. They are going to come to the county commissioners. It's going to be an easy sell for the neighbors to start that process at a grassroots level. That's where I think it should stay, rather than going into this type of area. I would recommend no vote on this. Thanks.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. A clarifying question to the good bringer of the bill. With this, it appears to me that if this bill were, or more important, the mill levies were successful in the respective counties, it would appear to me to some degree to be more efficient. Specifically, if private industry is having a difficult time in the rural communities, which I'm a part of, and we can't retain and or attract people, it would appear to me that there could be potentially efficiencies gained in this with the support of the mill levy. Therefore, ultimately, the cost for an ambulance may be reduced at the end of the equation. So, clarifying question. Thank you.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple points to make here. When we talk about more taxes and property taxes, it's the rural people that have land that really are paying the most tax. But I'll tell you, we're not the ones that actually get to use the ambulance as much. Most of us, because by the time you call the ambulance, they get to you, you're better off loading your people up and getting to town yourself. My dad had got mauled by a bull and had 11 broken ribs and a punctured lung and pretty beat up, but we took off an end gate, put him in the back of a vehicle and hit it made our way to town. I guess the point is here, we make do, we make it work, and to a lot of these rural people we're talking about, but we're self-sufficient and we take care of ourselves, and we're the ones that get taxed the most, and we don't even have the use of these the ambulances, really. By the time they make it, we better have got our loved ones to town. So that was just my point, and I'm no on this bill. Thank you.
Anyone else for their first time? Representative Knapp?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a difficult issue. I was a no vote in committee as well, and I just wanted to explain why. In testimony, we had some services that were averaging 2,100 calls, but 800 of them were unbillable. And that's, again, from Medicaid, Medicare. And this happens all over in all our communities. And the problem sometimes is we're a rural state. And we have centers where there's sometimes better hospitals, better healthcare choices. But sometimes even in my part of the country, that if you need a specialist, you'll be going to another state, whether north or south, just because of those population centers. And that's just the nature of the beast, right? So when it comes to ambulance service, that's the same thing. And an ambulance today, a properly equipped ambulance, is about $250,000 and getting upwards of $300,000. And so when you stand up these programs in communities, what you have to realize is some of the mills are worth $300,000. And then you've got the crews on top of that, a place to park the ambulance, and the expenses go on and on and on. And then when you're not getting reimbursed for those services, it's like starting a business over and over in communities that ultimately are going to fail. And ultimately, money will be needed to upstand those services and backfill those services. So I think we need to be very careful about what we start creating in our rural communities and what that might mean for the future, with the state having to pick up the tab for that. Because those mills, once you get to 4 and there's still not enough money to run the service, you're either going to stop the service or you're going to backfill it with state dollars. And so I think that the body just needs to be very careful with how we do this.
Representative Chadwick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we got to hear from those people who have the Organization for Minerals and Oil and Gas in the state. By their guesstimation of a 4 mil levy that might be assessed, they would pay 3.5 of those mills on and for the bill.
Vice Chairman Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a few questions, a few comments that I think warrant some response. And so I think the one value that Wyoming holds dear is that that people have a right to decide for themselves on things, and that includes taxation. And so there's nothing in this bill that allows the board to levy taxes. That's done at the election. If the people don't want it, vote it down. That's fine. But if they do want it, they should be able to vote it in and allow that to be a tool as part of funding emergency medical services. I think that the question on the medical districts are a little bit different, and it's not just emergency medical services. It also helps fund clinics and hospitals. And so if you've got a medical district that may or may not, that healthcare provider may or may not cover emergency medical services. If it does, isn't that wonderful? But if it doesn't, if you don't have in my county, we don't have a medical district, one getting ready to be, but we don't have one currently. And so there's no way to do that. There's a question about who pays. And I think that is absolutely a very valid point. If you live in a county where there's a lot of industry and that industry pays a lot of property taxes, there's no doubt that they're going to pay a good portion of this. But have they opposed this bill? And the answer to that is no. They have not. Had plenty of opportunity to opine on it and have not. Emergency medical services are just as important to the industry, where accidents hopefully do not happen, but sometimes do. They want to have access to that too for their employees. And so, yes, that burden's on them, but they have not opposed the bill. Medicaid reimbursement on ambulance services, no doubt, right again. That's why we created the Emergency Medical Service Ambulance Service Upper Payment Limit Program a couple of years ago. Similar, you saw me up here doing this the other day to capture more of those funds, and these funds generated could be used as part of that assessment to collect that higher reimbursement for Medicare or Medicaid. Or the other solution for that is we as a legislature can increase the amount we pay for ambulance services in Medicaid so that reimbursement back to those providers are more. So we have options there. Again, there's concern that this is opening a door to put a tax in place. Yes. But who decides that? Isn't that the decision we get to make? Not us as a legislature. We're not making it and saying this tax is imposed on you, but this will be the people who want to have this service. And if they want to have it, pass the tax. If you don't pass the tax, and you determine the amount or the quality of emergency medical services in your region. And I think that that's fair. There's conversation. There was a point made here by how special districts are created. There are two ways. One where resolutions pass, as I pointed out in the beginning of my comments, and one where the commissioners can create it. But both of them require the mill to be voted on by the people. Efficiencies, the good bringer of the bill from down there in the county where the great trapper once resided, talked about efficiencies. Yes, certainly appears in my mind that if you've got a county that has a couple of population centers and then you have 3 or 4 outlying smaller communities, the ability to have efficiencies in a less populated area being funded this way certainly is achieved. If you want to make do, don't pass the mill levy. Great, got it. Operate O&M costs from the good former county commissioner up in coal country. He's right. And do we come back to, so where does the burden of providing ambulance service belong? And that was the conversation over the past year or so. Do we go right to the state and say, state, help us fund ambulance services? Or do we think that it's more local? Counties, do you have a responsibility to do that? And I believe that's where it starts. And so operation, O&M costs, operation and maintenance costs, he's right. But those two are controlled locally. And so if the funding's coming locally and operation and maintenance is controlled locally, I think that we're not thinking that there's an endless source of cash to run that, and there's better oversight. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate this has really been good discussion, and this really comes down to trying to solve a problem in our state where counties are struggling to have ambulance services and trying to find ways to fund them. And we think that should be locally. If you need ambulance, this can maybe help provide the way to do that. And again, pass it. And if you don't want to do it, don't pass the mill levy. I think that it's that reasonable. Or your county commissioners may not even set it up. It's up to them. It just provides another opportunity. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. With respect to the comments from the district representative from District 4, I too was concerned that a big portion of the burden might fall on the minerals industries, and because minerals industries pay about half of the property tax in the state. So I contacted our representatives of the trona industry in my county and asked them, what do you think of this bill? What do you think about it? and they are not opposed to it. And it's my understanding that the association that represents mining generally also not opposed. The association representing petroleum interests also not opposed to this bill. What this bill solves is, and it's a responsible use of government, where there's a market failure, then it's responsible for the government to get involved. This bill allows for local control. So on for Senate File 43. Thank you.
John Todd? Representative Byron?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I want to bring it back to the first responder perspective. And when we're calling 911, we want this box on wheels to show up. We heard earlier it's maybe 300,000. They're maybe 400,000. The equipment in them, maybe another 150,000. One monitor's $35,000. So there's a big ask here. And when we present this to our county commissioners, if we don't have a district like this, they have a decision to make. Do they fund the rec center? Do they fund the roads? Do they fund an ambulance? And often, first responders, fire trucks, ambulances kind of get kicked down the road. Oh, we'll get that next year. So I think this provides an opportunity to put it to the voters who are calling 911 to make a decision what they want to show up. I would implore the body to you want a new ambulance showing up when you are at your weakest moment, at your worst day. So I think it's important to think about that aspect of it. And remember, the same person calling 911, the voter, the members of our communities will get to decide this. And once again, it does go back to the commission, but it is a tool to help a very simple principle that we all expect, that when 911 gets called, somebody is coming. So I think it is important to think about that as you decide where you stand on this bill. And remember, do you want an ambulance that's fully equipped, ready to go in a rural community that maybe already drove 20 minutes? You got an hour. You got 45 minutes to get this patient back to the hospital. Or do you want an ambulance because it wasn't funded, that's got some bald tires that might not quite make it to come get you? I mean, make that decision as you decide how you want to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I guess. Yesterday in committee, there was a bit of a misunderstanding or just clarity of thought, I think, and there was some people kind of upset because I didn't quite understand the way that it was going to be developed, the district itself, and when the mills could be, if they could be established with the creation of the district or if they would be put on later. If it would be created with them or without them and things like that. So my county assessor, not assessor, county clerk was on the phone with me, and that was where it was. So for those of you that think I'm just not quite all there on this bill, that was why. There was some questions there about the clarity of that, and in fact, she had to speak with the commissioners for that clarity, and so we've been able to see a couple things there. But I live in a county that is very sparse. I would have, if there was an accident, the need, I guess, to call an ambulance if I thought it could get there in time, or if I could just get to the hospital myself. In most likelihood, in my county, we wouldn't go to the local hospital for very long anyway. We would be transported somewhere else. So as I have gone to these ambulance meetings over the last year and a half, and I mean, it's a big deal. One of the towns in our county, which is at the northern part of it, that needs ambulance service as well to travel to the nearest hospital, which would be Lander or Riverton. They had 6 calls last year. So to provide the service and the staff and all this Cadillac stuff that we're talking about for 6 calls, because when is there going to be an emergency? Nobody knows. And so that is one thing. I do see here in the bill that the commissioners can add or subtract, or the board can add or subtract portions of that district. So that's something. The other thing is that the county, our county commissioners are a wonderful group, and they have worked and worked and worked over the years to fix this problem or try to fix it. And they have hired a private company out of the southeast portion of our country to come in and privatize this, okay? They went through the things, the company guaranteed, yes, we can handle your county, there is no problem, there is no problem. $800,000, okay? Well, I heard from the commissioners yesterday, 1.3 million, and that's not enough. So I guess what I'm intimating is that while, and the other thing was staffing. You know, there's just not enough people. We can't get people to come here. Well, if you paid them more, well, if there's no people, there's no people. If there's not people that want to live in this state, they don't want to live here. And that's just the way it is. So if we look at all of the things about which committees would benefit, which committees would be in the district, whether we're going to have a hospital district, what that's going to look like with the other hospitals, how to fund it, if there's going to be staffing, all of those things, I would ask you, while I do believe that this is important in Wyoming, I would ask you to think about voting no and make this an interim topic so that we can really look at some of the things that are going on in our state. And we're starting to see a change. I did talk to some people in healthcare in another part of the state, and they said that they had put out for a few employees and had adequate amounts of applications received, or responses. So it is starting to change, but I believe we need, I believe we need a little more time to get back to where we need to be so we can look at things logically and reality sets in. A lot of things are going to change in March and April and May with the federal government. So anyway, that's what I have to say. So I'm asking you to vote no and ask that we would put this before Management Council for an interim topic. Thank you.
Representative Hornak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to be clear, if we don't vote for this bill, it's not going to be dead bodies in the street at our out in our rural communities. It's not going to be like that. There are mechanisms in place to set up these special districts already. This bill changes how we do that, especially for EMS services. So currently, you get 60% of the people to file a petition. They go before the county commissioners because they want to set this up. So anyway, there are mechanisms in place, and I don't think we necessarily need to change that at this point for these services. I urge a no vote. Thanks.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, and do so with the recommendation that Senate File 43 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Senate File 43 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 47. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 47, sponsored by Education. Education repeal of immunity for corporal discipline, an act related to K through 12 education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 47. Education, repeal of immunity for corporal discipline. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clauston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermueller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman.
Representative Northrup, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure?
I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so as a recommendation that Senate File 47 do pass, and I hereby pass off the explanation of the bill to the good representative from the land named after a Civil War president.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Recognize the chair, please. You did? Okay. I did not. Representative Allred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thank you. Chairman. Repeal of the corporal punishment being deliberately hitting with a belt or a paddle, et cetera. I just want to share a little bit of information with you here on a study that said that the background study, Wyoming is one of 19 states where corporal punishment is still legal in the public schools. And prior to that study, 48 public school districts, 22 of them still allowed, they still had a policy that they could do that. Well, after the study, the person who did the study came back. There are only 3 school districts now in the state that allow corporal punishment. So it is going away, and with this good little bill, we'd be able to take care of all of that. So I urge an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the bringer of the bill, or maybe the committee. Was there any testimony within the committee about, because as I read this bill, I'm a little bit nervous about the definition of corporal punishment and what that encompasses. And I'm envisioning the situation where you have, let's say, a teacher's in her classroom, she runs out into the hallway and there's two kids fighting, right? And she grabs one of them, throws them up against one wall and the other one up against the other wall and says, knock it off. Is that going to qualify as corporal punishment? Are we exposing our teachers back home to, because what we're doing is we're removing their protection under the law. We're removing their immunity from suit for engaging in that sort of activity if it falls under that. And so my question is, was there testimony regarding that type of situation within the committee?
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was some brief question about that to answer the last question, and teachers do have training in terms of when they have to deal with students in those sorts of scenarios. That's not necessarily considered corporal punishment. That's, I don't know exactly, we didn't talk in detail about what that would be considered, but that's more of a de-escalation technique, whereas corporal punishment is quite the opposite.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So corporal punishment, of course, is where you pull out a belt or a paddle or use your hand, and that's the kind of punishment that actually needs to be done at home by the parents. And so that's why we're presenting this bill at this time.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just, I guess the question for the committee again is, where is that defined? Just so I can lay my eyes on that definition. And I'm not saying we need corporal punishment in schools. What I'm saying is I want to make sure our teachers are protected from doing everyday things they actually need to do. And so I'm just a little bit nervous about removing that immunity wholeheartedly, just scratching it from the green books without maybe making sure they have the immunity from that other liability that I'm talking about. And so if somebody can point me to that definition and point me to the part of the green book that actually protects our teachers from those actions, then I'll be fine with the bill. But if not, I'm probably not going to be.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Okay. Are you ready for the question? Okay. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Northrup's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with recommendation that Senate File 47 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Chair is in doubt. Do a roll call. All those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. Senate File 47 fails. Okay, there's more than 18. Do we have to do a roll call? Are we good? Okay. Yep. Yep. Pursuant to House Rule 6-6B, the bill having failed a division vote, a roll call vote is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Elliman, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Klauston,
No.
Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Harrelson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stiff, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washit, Western, Winter,
Excused.
Wiley,
Excused.
Yin, Swanser Dan, Swanser Dave, Speaker Summers. Newsom, can you repeat, please? Larson Lloyd? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 12 aye, 47 no, 3 excused.
Pursuant to House Rule 6-6B, Senate File 47, having failed a roll call vote, is indefinitely postponed. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 55. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Chancery Court Vacancies Extension Amendment, an act relating to courts. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 55, Chancery Court Vacancies Extension Amendment. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Harrelson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, Vice Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 55 do pass. And I will handle the explanation of the bill if it be your pleasure.
Thank you, Chairman Washit.
Thank you. Members, I bring you Senate File 55, very brief little bill. A few years ago, the legislature created the Chancery Courts. That Chancery Court has been stood up. The caseload has been growing, but is still relatively small. And we've been staffing those courts with temporary judges from the district court filling that role. And what this bill does is sets back the date at which we actually assign a full-time judge to the Chancery Court, giving that court time to build its workload to make that justification. So we're just pushing back till January 1st, 2025, the appointment of a full-time judge to the Chancery Court. Please vote aye.
Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thanks. Just a friendly question, Mr. Chairman. So those of you who are new to the body, we created Chancery Court in 2019. At that time, it was supposed to be effective in 2022 to get one of these judges. Let's see, then it was in 2020, we amended again if it had to be a justice to a judge, and that was going to be okay. And then 2021, it was House Bill 42. We extended it to 2023. Then we came back last year in Senate File 52, and we adjusted that date to 2024. So here we are in 2023, pushing the date to 2025. My question is just, what's the plan here? Like, what is the goal? Are we going to get there? And has there been testimony of this is the dead set date? Because I don't want to be back here next year pushing it out another year.
Chairman Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On a very like note, I guess my question is, we started this process going on 4 years ago because we were told there was a definitive need that we needed to get these business cases before a Chancery Court judge, and that this would speed up the process and we would get things going, and we would have a heck of a lot more opportunity to get the workload that's going in front of these current district court judges out of the way, and we'd be moving this into the district court, into the Chancery Court. And as the good chairman just brought forward, we haven't heard a single case. I don't even know if we have any type of furniture sitting up in the offices up there. I'm starting to wonder whether or not we truly needed this. I was an aye vote when this came through, but I'm really beginning to wonder if we're going to keep coming back every year going, well, we need to get enough time to get the workload set up. I'm thinking we have the workload. What are we waiting on?
Chairman Olson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have to correct a statement made by the good chairman of transportation. We have heard over 15 cases as of last year. So it's not accurate that the Chancery Court hasn't heard any cases. What's accurate, though, is that the case load is not sufficient enough to justify a full-time judge, and it just takes time to build a docket. It takes time for the legal community to understand the existence of the court, to understand the purpose of the court, and to decide, and for litigants to decide to go into this court. So the court is being used, and it's being staffed by district judges. And so the idea is a cost-saving measure because it's not ready for a full-time judge. That's it. It's not, you can't force the cases to exist. The cases are going to roll out as they roll out, and over time, we watch the docket. The docket's already increasing. Might not be as fast as some of us want it to roll out, but maybe that's a good thing. Less litigious people. We shouldn't be complaining about whether we have litigious people or not in Wyoming. That seems kind of silly. But we'll eventually get to the place where hopefully we can have a full-time judge separate and apart from those district judges. So just wanted to clarify some of the facts there with the court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just basically am going to reiterate what the good lawyer just said from what we heard in testimony in committee. And actually, if you think about it, so what this allows is the most measured way for us to continue to move forward with these courts. Because so right now, the district court judges are hearing those cases. So until there's enough cases to justify it having staff and having a judge, we can continue to have the currently employed district court judges handle the cases. And and it's getting up and it's getting going and people are using it, but it's also a choice where they file. So there's also sort of an education of the community that's happening. So it's taking time, and while it's taking time, this is by far the most efficient and economical way to do it. So it's just allowing for that process to take place.
Chairman Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things that happens with the development of a chancery court is that businesses that are entering into contracts will put in their contracts where disputes will be resolved. And when contracts are 5, 10, 15 years old, before a chancery court even existed, those contracts don't mention chancery court as the primary court in which we will resolve those disputes arising under that contract. As these business entities become more familiar with the existence of the chancery court, they're more likely to put into their contracts, much like we did with a previous piece of legislation allowing state agencies to put into their contracts, that the chancery court would be the venue for resolution of those disputes. So it's going to grow, taking a little more time than we had anticipated, but we're managing the workload with the part-time judges. No big rush to put a permanent judge in there, but we're getting there. It's growing and developing much like we thought it would, but it's just a little bit slower.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the whole committee, I like to eat humble pie every once in a while. So I appreciate the clarification on what's going on here, and hearing some of these particular cases that have been heard. I am still not completely convinced that the Chancery Court seems to be the way to go forward. Maybe we'll look at a second or third reading amendment on this, but 15 cases in 4 years doesn't seem to be the calling that we were all told it was going to be. So I appreciate the cost savings. I appreciate that we're pushing this out and not hiring a judge and staff and all that. So aye for the bill, but maybe we can work on cleaning this up. Thanks.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe the good chair of Judiciary can explain to me. But it looks to me like the bill just pushes out 1 year fully staffing the Chancery Court. It has nothing to do whether we're going to have the Chancery Court or not. It's whether we're going to fully staff something that we can't staff now. We don't need that staffing. So if you want the bill to get rid of the Chancery Court, that's a different bill. That's not this bill. This bill is just pushing out the date so we utilize the resources we have and don't hire extra resources we don't need. On and for the bill.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you. Quickly, Mr. Chairman, I didn't want anyone to think I'm not in favor of the bill. I certainly am. I am just in favor of what's the long-range plan, some benchmarks, and maybe in the interim we can continue to discuss. And I think it's good we don't have more lawsuits. And I'm optimistic that will stay for another year. I just want to know if we continue not to have the number of cases. I'm optimistic we'll keep that caseload down. But I just want to know what the long-term plan is. But this is a good bill and necessary, because what happens if you don't extend it is you fall into another statute where you have to appoint a full salaried judge, and I don't think anybody wants to spend money when we don't need to. So it's a good bill, vote aye, and I'm just kind of signaling to the good chairman of the Judiciary Committee that long-range plan might be appropriate in the interim.
Thank you. Chairman Olson.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I really don't mean to belabor this, but I really have to clarify one more thing. I think especially for the newer members who are hearing this back and forth on the Chancery Court. And I want to be clear on what, I guess, I won't say that it was a promise, but what the expectation of the creation of the Chancery Court was. I don't think the expectation was ever at the moment of creation, and I say this because I was the chairman of the committee that brought this bill forward. It wasn't that we would have a court full of litigants. That's not what anyone was trying to create. The creation of the Chancery Court is a piece, its existence is a piece to the puzzle, or to the pie, growing the pie, for companies coming to Wyoming. So that when a company is making its decision to domicile or re-domicile in the state of Wyoming, that it will look to whether a Chancery Court exists. We know this because factually, that's a huge piece to why Delaware is so successful in creating companies
because it has a chancery court. That's what Wyoming built its system off of, was the Delaware model. So I just want to be really clear that the idea as we move forward with this, extending the date out, but as you hear more about the Chancery Court in the future, I think it's important to understand that the measure is not how many cases and litigants there are. The measure is how many companies come to Wyoming because of the existence of the court. That was the purpose of the court, or the creation of the court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washat's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, and do so with the recommendation that Senate File 55 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Senate File 55 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 69. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 69, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Electronic Records Retention, an act relating to courts. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 69, Electronic Records Retention, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, Vice Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 69 do pass. And I'll turn over explanation of the bill to the member of our committee from District 40.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you Senate File 69 and ask for your favorable consideration. Really what this simple little bill is intending to do is modernize our court filing systems. As we move towards e-filing, right now we have e-filing in I think 4 or 5 districts, I can't remember off the top of my head. But sooner or later, all of the county district courts, circuit courts will have e-filing available. And so this particular change to the statute is going to allow that to happen. The other thing it's going to allow to happen is, so as we try to get rid of old files, or in other words, put them in a place, digitize them, and get them literally on a disk, take up less space, cost us less money, create efficiencies within the court system. This bill allows us to do that, because right now, the current language requires our district court clerks to actually microfilm or microfiche the whatever court records they have in their possession, and no one does that anymore. Everybody's moving to digitizing or scanning, and so we need to make that conforming change to the statute. And we also are allowing the Supreme Court to make the rules for the storage of those, because they're in their possession. And that's really all it does. And I would stand for any questions.
Is there any discussion on the bill? Hearing none. Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Waship's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 69 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Senate File 69 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 71. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 71, sponsored by Appropriations, State Loan and Bond Programs, an act relating to state public purpose investments. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 71, State Loan and Bond Programs, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move in the Committee Whole rise and report it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 71 do pass, and I will turn the explanation over to the good gentleman from Laramie County.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present Senate File 71 to you members and request your favorable consideration. What the bill does, this is a JAC bill. We've had some loan options available through the state. And because we've had these options available at certain amounts, there's been some difficulty for our chief investment officer to use and invest those funds to get a higher rate of return. So what this bill does is go into some of those previous loan amounts and lower the dollar amount that we had set aside for those loans. We set up new amounts that are above what the level of use is so that we can get more of the money back into long-term investments working for better investment returns. We've also made the method more consistent to determine what the loan interest rate will be on political subdivisions, special districts, farm, airport, and joint powers board eligible loans. And we've consolidated some of the loan options. After April 1st of this year, Joint Powers Act loans and community college student dorm loans will no longer be made. But however, the arrangements have been made for those needs, those loans, to be transferred over to construction loans. We've reduced a couple of options and really call your attention to the farm loan. The threshold reduced from 275 million to 50 million. But if you go in here and look at the interest rate, my friends, they're actually getting a better deal, right? And so what we're doing is we're linking this consistently to the interest rate of our U.S. Treasury return. And so last Friday was about 3.72, and the average is 3.4. If you look at the current Green Book, the loan rate was a little bit higher than that. So we're getting a little better deal for the farm loans. So to summarize, keeping more of the people's money working for better investment returns, eliminating unused options while combining the same eligible entities for the JPA loans, moving student dorm loans into capital construction infrastructure loan program while providing a consistent interest rate across the board for those loans, and keeping the farm loan program and appropriately using capital construction loans for construction projects makes this a good bill, and I ask for your eye. Any questions? Call the question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 71 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 71 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 91. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 91, sponsored by Senator Nethercott, creation of tenancy by the entirety, an act relating to property, conveyances, and security transactions. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 91, creation of tenancy by the entirety, respectfully reports, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, Vice Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 91 do pass. There is a committee of the whole amendment, which the good representative in the back of the room will present at the appropriate time. I'm going to hand off explanation of the bill to our good Speaker Pro Tem.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So what this bill does is that it clarifies that if a husband and wife take property jointly, that it is deemed to be as tenants by the entirety. Now, you may wonder, why do we need that bill? Because that's the law already. If you look in Wyoming's case law, it's been held for 100 years that if a husband and wife buy property together, that it's deemed to be held as tenants by the entirety. Well, there was an unfortunate opinion from a federal court that said otherwise, and so that's resulting in this clarification that's required. So this bill doesn't really change the law. It effectively is just a response to a federal court, and from my point of view, misreading the law. So this says that if a husband and wife buy property, buy a home together, for example, as tenants by the entirety, buy property jointly, it is deemed to be tenants by the entirety, and that's a good thing. And here's why it's such a good thing. Tenancy by the entirety is a great way to protect your home from being taken away by creditors of just one spouse. That's what really matters. So and it prevents one of the spouses from going off and gambling the house away, essentially. So this is a good bill. Please vote aye.
Representative Chesnick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to this bill. This is a simple clarification, does not change the intent of the bill at all. It actually, I think, clarifies, but it also protects for one particular unusual situation that is still legal, but we want to protect it. And that is, there may be a situation in which the parties, the husband and wife, might choose for whatever reason to actually own property as tenants in common and not by tenants by the entirities. That might be a prenuptial agreement or whatever the circumstances might be, but they might legally choose to do that. And in order to protect them, their right to do that, the amendment on line 6, that's what the reference, unless the deed specifies another form of ownership. So if you choose to do it by tenants by entirety, you're allowed to do that. But if you don't do that, and you simply say the property is held as husband and wife or spouses, that shall be deemed to create a tenancy by the entirities. I have spoken with the sponsor of the bill on the Senate side. She is okay with this language, and I would urge your favorable consideration of this amendment.
Representative Stiff?
Mr. Chairman, on and in support of Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, it is probably going to be a rare circumstance that husband and wife would want to do this, but it could be useful in the event, say, for example, they don't trust each other. So for that eventuality, please vote aye.
Question. We are in Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 91. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill. Chairman Washik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard testimony in committee that there are tens of thousands of these deeds on file all over Wyoming, where folks entered into these deeds anticipating that husband and wife would be joint owners of the property. And then with this federal court decision, all that's in question. This statute works to address that problem. Please vote aye.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washut's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 91 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Senate File 91 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 173. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 173, sponsored by Senator Driscoll. Financial institutions, similar names. An act relating to banks, banking, and finance. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 173, engrossed. Financial institutions, similar names. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Burkhart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when a Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 173 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I'll just handle the bill. Ladies and gentlemen, the bill makes a couple changes in statute. In the past, the Banking Commission, when they looked at bank names, had to control similar names, and it was done by county. This changes that say it's done by this throughout the state now, because you could get banks in a northeast county and a bank in a southeast county with very similar sounding names. And with the banks having branches now in some places, it could confuse customers. So that's the change in a nutshell. Just changes to 3 words in statute from county, all 3 places from county to state. And seeing no one at the mics, I guess I'll call for the question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Burkhart's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 173 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Senate File 173 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Ready? Representative Nyman. Majority Floor Leader Nyman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion carries.
The reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 139, do pass. Senate File 88, do pass amended. Senate File 10, do pass amended. Senate File 7, do pass. Senate File 37, do pass amended. Senate File 40, do pass. Senate File 43, do pass. Senate File 47 failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. Senate File 55, do pass. Senate File 69, do pass. Senate File 71, do pass. Senate File 91, do pass amended. Senate File 173, do pass. Representative Clouston, Chairman.
Chairman Clouston,
I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Clouston. All right, the House will come to order. Messages from the Senate.
Message 313. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 6, Insurance Rebating Modernization, ayes 30. Message 315. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with the like Committee Number 1 from the House on amendments to House Bill 47. The Senate conferees are Senator Case, Chairman, Senator Barlow, Senator Salazar. Message 316. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 5, Voter Registry, Listed Voter ID and Absentee Ballots. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 31. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 317. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 19, State Indian Child Welfare Act Task Force. Ayes 19, noes 12. Message 318. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 86, Disclosure of Private Cryptographic Keys. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 31. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 319. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 147, Unlawful Trespass Signage, Taking of Wildlife. Ayes 25, noes 6. Message 320. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 160, Driver's License Veterans Designation, replacing DD Form 214. Ayes 31. Message 321. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 15, County Authority to Dissolve Museum Boards clarification. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 24, noes 7. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 322. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 57, Armed Forces Amendments. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 29, noes 2. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 323, Mr. Speaker, House Bill 93, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 30, 1. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 324. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 78, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools. Ayes 31. Message 325. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 42, Taxation of Cigars. The Senate failed to concur on House amendments to the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 1, noes 30. Message 326. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with the Like Committee Number 1 from the House on amendments to Senate File 42. The Senate conferees are Senator Beitman, Chairman, Senator Bouchard, Senator Scott. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
The JCC1 on Senate File 48, the conference committee will be Representative Clouston, Representative Harshman, Chairman Northrop, and Chairman Northrop will be the chair. We're at that order of business of request to concur with Senate amendments to House bills. The first message for our consideration is message number 298 on House Bill number 9, Representative Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message number 298 and urge that we do not concur. May I explain?
Please.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Speaker. Members down the hall made some alterations to the language. This bill deals with juvenile courts and concurrent jurisdiction. There was some language in the original bill that the committee amended to clarify that we were dealing only with adults under the age of 21 because juvenile courts don't have any jurisdiction for adults over age 21. So the language change that the Senate or our counterparts down the hall put in was to change that under the age 21 language and put in age 18 and older, which convolutes the matter. And I think it's worthy of some discussion. So please vote no on concurrence.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 9. A majority of elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Elliman? I'm sorry. Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Excused. Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washit? Western? Winter excused. Wiley? Yin? Zwaniter Dan? Zwaniter Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Allemand? Aye to no. Obermuller? Excused to no. Further changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 0 aye, 59 no, 3 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 9. The next the conference committee on House Bill 9 will be Washit, Provenza, Oakley chair. The next message for our consideration will be message number 299 on House Bill 13, Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message number 299 and request an aye vote on concurrence. Members, on 299, this dealt with the Office of Guardian Ad Litem, where we often refer to in statute to it being a program. It's now an office, and there's just a bunch of cleanup language throughout the statutes. When the bill was at the other end of the building, one of their LSO staff attorneys noticed that there were some additional places in statute that had not been captured in the original bill, and had carefully identified those additional places where we needed to update the language from program to office. That's all that's being suggested in this concurrence, and so I ask for a yes vote.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 13. A majority of elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis excused. Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman excused. Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washit? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwaniter Dan? Zwaniter Dave? Speaker Summers? I'm sorry, Western? Are there any changes? Haroldson? No to aye. Further changes? Allred? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 13. The next message for our consideration is message number 305 on House Bill 14. Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message number 305 and ask for a no vote on concurrence. Members, this is the bill you might remember where we raised the filing fees in civil court cases. There was discussion about whether or not to exempt state agencies from that fee increase until the start of their next budget year. We rejected that approach simply because it created inconsistency in the prices being charged. And one of the things we were trying to accomplish with the bill was to build in consistency. So I think it's worth at least a conversation with the counterparts down the hall. So I'd ask for a no vote on message 305.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 14. A majority of elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? I'm sorry, Allred? Can you repeat? Andrew? Angelos? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Excused? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Singh, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 8 aye, 53 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 14. The conference committee for House Bill 14 will be Lawley, Sherwood, Washut, Chair. The next message for our consideration is message number 307 on House Bill 16. Chairman Eklund? Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, I move message number 307 to House Bill 16 and would ask for a no vote from the body. We had a fairly lengthy discussion on, if you'll look at it, it crosses out what the committee felt clearly defined how to value the improvements on state land. Now, since then, we've heard possibly what the new language is and what we put in there are synonymous, but I'd still like to have a discussion with the the other side to be sure that that's happening. I'd ask for a no vote, please.
We are voting on the motion to concur, let's make sure there's no comments. We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 16. A majority of the elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman, excused. Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 0 aye, 61 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 16. Conference Committee, Tarver, Eklund, Crago, Chair. The next message for our consideration is message number 300 on House Bill 18. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move message 300 on House Bill 18 and ask for your aye vote. The Senate just did some cleanup. I'm hoping I'm asking for an aye vote. Let me check with the chairman of the tribal, but I assumed it was a simple cleanup. You'll see that when we talk about these missing person alert systems, right now in the statute, the bill says either tribe or both tribes or the cooperative tribal governing body. And they can't think of a time where you'd have both tribes against the cooperative tribal governing body. And it just made sense to take out that both tribe language. So if you want to operate or seek to operate an alert system, you're taking out both tribes and including Eastern Shoshone, Northern Arapaho, or the cooperative tribal governing body. But I may stand corrected if the good chairman of the Tribal Affairs Committee has a different understanding.
Representative Larson for your first time.
So I'd encourage a no vote. Last year, we changed our statutes, went through all the statutes to identify that Eastern Shoshone tribe, Northern Arapaho tribe, or a cooperative agreement with both tribes where necessary. That needs to stay in place because that does not always exist. And there are times where you find one tribe wants to participate in a program and another doesn't. So I would encourage a no vote.
Anybody else like to speak on this for the first time? Anybody for the second time before the chairman? Chairman Zwanitzer, you want another bite at the apple?
Can I hold for 5 seconds, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
To show the good.
Mr. Chairman.
Is this for a second time?
It is.
Okay,
Or third.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
So I hadn't seen the concurrence report, and I apologize for that. That's my fault, Mr. Chairman, but I see what they're doing, and I do agree.
All right. So we are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 18. A majority of elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Elleman? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman excused. Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Swanitzer Dan? Swanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Are there any changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 18. The next message for our consideration is message number 303 on House Bill number 20. Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker.
Please.
I move message 303 to House Bill 20 and would ask for an aye vote on the on concurrence. The only change to the bill was on page 2, line 11, and after county they inserted or counties. So it's a technical change, and I'd ask for an aye vote.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 20. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Elleman? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman excused. Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Are there any changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 52 aye, 9 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 20. The next message for our consideration is message number 301 on House Bill 61. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move concurrence to Senate Message 301 to House Bill 61 and ask for your aye vote on concurrence. What this amendment does is make sure that we clear up the dates. There was some confusion on dates because we split a biennial budget for this, so we had to make sure the dates were correct. It also clears up when the department places these people into its normal budget when the additional appropriation runs out. And then just add some notwithstanding language on reversion of the funds. And I think it's a good amendment from the Senate, and I'd ask for your aye vote.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 61. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Ellerman? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman excused. Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwaniter Dan? Zwaniter Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Are there any changes? Any changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 61. The next message for our consideration is message number 310 on House Bill 104, Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for message number 310 on House Bill 104 and ask for your aye vote. The Senate, or the folks at the other end of the hall just did some minor wordsmithing as it came to rulemaking on this particular bill. So I'd ask for concurrence.
Representative Crago for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question for the bringer of the motion. It looks to me by reading the concurrence that we're actually taking rulemaking out of the bill. And if that's correct, that's taking the public input out of the idea of the bill. I think rulemaking involves the public, and so I guess I'd just like to know if we're actually removing rulemaking from the commission. And
Representative Haroldson for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the clarification we got is that they felt it was a redundancy because we gave the rulemaking ability at the end and put it in there, and they said it was a redundancy, so they felt that it was a cleanup to take that out of that section. That's how it was described to us.
Anybody else for their first time? Chairman Zwanitzer, sensing you're headed to the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe just some more comment there on the top of page 3. I understand what they did on the rulemaking, maybe being a copy there in subsection H in the bottom of page 3, but it looks like there were multiple amendments, and you're also taking the rule of the commission out in subsection B. I'm trying to track it quickly, but I'm a little worried, and maybe the department is okay, but I'm not, and I'm looking for some more testimony on why both of those changes happened, and if the rulemaking ability established in subsection H in the bottom of page 3 also covers subsection B there on the bottom of page 2.
Representative Storer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that the change in the Senate removes the rulemaking authority on private land only. It doesn't take the public out of the rulemaking process, but only will apply to public land rather than private land is the way I understand it. Thanks.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time? Representative Harrelson for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think at this point in time, with there being this concern that we have an issue here, I know the original request was an aye for concurrence, but at this point, let's go for a no for concurrence. Let's get together with them and just make sure we're all on the same page. And the agency in question here is for sure on board, because the last thing we want to do is take away their ability to help regulate this. So I definitely would, at this point, request a no on concurrence. Let's get over there and just have this conversation.
Anybody else for their second time? All right, we are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 104. A majority of elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Klauston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Harrelson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwaniter Dan, Zwaniter Dave, Speaker Summers.
No.
Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 1 aye, 61 no.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 104. Conference committee on House Bill 104 will be Harrelson, Chair, Crago, and Newsom. The next message for our consideration is message number 311 on House Bill 181. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move message number 311 on House Bill 181 and ask for your aye vote on the concurrence and turn the explanation of the folks down the hall to the good representative from Natrona.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is on House Bill 181, and what our good friends down the hall did is on page 10 of the bill. This is in relation to the negative carryover balance for online sports wagering, and they moved that from being able to carry a negative balance carry it over for 2 months to only carry it over for 1 month, and I think that's probably a pretty good idea and would ask for your favorable vote. So please vote yes on concurrence.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 181. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Klauston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Harrelson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwaniter Dan, Zwaniter Dave, Speaker Summers.
Aye.
Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 181.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Ward, you have a privilege?
I just have a question. There's some confusion when we vote on, you must have explained this before, but when we vote aye or nay on concurrence, does that change our vote on the bill if we voted a different way when it passed the House?
So Representative Ward, that's a good question. It doesn't change your original vote at all. A lot of times representatives will vote on concurrence the same way they voted on the original bill, but it doesn't discount your original vote at all. So the conferees that appointed to JCC 1 on House Bill 47 for the House side will be Harshman, Washut, Olson, Chair. And where's my other one? The conferees appointed to JCC 1 on Senate File 42. Just a minute. I'm going to do that one later. I got to research that one. All right. Reports from standing committees.
Senate File 29, sponsored by Agriculture. Brucellosis management updates, an act relating to agriculture, livestock, and other animals. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 29. Brucellosis management updates. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Alaman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. Senate File 61, sponsored by Management Council. Legislator per diem, an act relating to per diem rates. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 61 engrossed. Legislator per diem. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Byron, Harshman, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Zwanitzer. Noes. Representatives Bear, Locke, Strock. Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate Joint Resolution 3, sponsored by Senator Dockstader. Property tax exemption for the elderly and infirm. A joint resolution to amend the Wyoming Constitution by authorizing a homeowner's property tax exemption for the elderly and the infirm. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate Joint Resolution 3, property tax exemption for the elderly and infirm. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Byron, Harshman, Northrup, Oakley, Strock. Noes. Representative Bear, Locke, Storers, Zwanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate File 106, sponsored by Natural Resource Funding. 2023 Large Project Funding, an act relating to the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Funding Act. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 106, engrossed, 2023 large project funding, respectfully report same back to the House with recommendation to do pass. Ayes. Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Storer, Western, Winter. Representative Western, Vice Chairman. Senate File 58, sponsored by Travel, Sutton Archaeological Site Administration, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 58, engrossed, Sutton Archaeological Site Administration, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Storer, Western, Winter. Representative Western, Vice Chairman. Senate File 87, sponsored by Senator Cooper. Natural Resource Funding, Large Project Threshold Increase, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 87. Natural Resource Funding, Large Project Threshold Increase. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Storer, Western, Winter. Representative Western, Vice Chairman. Senate File 38, sponsored by Senator Schuler. Special license plates, organ donations, an act relating to motor vehicles, license plates. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 38, engrossed. Special license plates, organ donations. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Wiley. Noes. Representative Smith, Stivar. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 178, sponsored by Senator Boner. Mountain Lion Pursuit Seasons, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 178, engrossed, Mountain Lion Pursuit Seasons. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Storer, Western, Winter. Representative Western, Vice Chairman. Senate File 21, sponsored by Transportation. High Occupancy Vehicle Lanes, an act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highway, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 21, engrossed, High Occupancy Vehicle Lanes. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Stivar, Wiley. Noes. Representative Smith. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 16, sponsored by Transportation. State Employee Moving Expenses, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 16, engrossed. State Employee Moving Expenses. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Smith, Wiley. Noes. Representatives Pendergraft, Stivar. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 102, sponsored by Senator Salazar. Food Freedom Act amendments, an act relating to marketing homemade foods. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 102, engrossed, Food Freedom Act amendments. Respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Alaman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
Re-referrals, Vice or Chairman Harshman. Sixty-one, Senate File 61.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would re-refer Senate File 61 to your Appropriations Committee number 2.
Seeing no objection, Senate File 61 is re-referred to Committee number 2. Conferees appointed for JCC 1 on Senate File 42 be J.T. Larson, Yin, Harshman, Chair. All right. I have it right here, but I'm going to need my enrolled acts, okay. We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. The reading clerk you'll give them to me. All right. All right, thank you. Enrolled Act number 15, the reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 15 being original House Bill 35. An act relating to child care facilities, providing an exception to child care facility certification for specified part-time daycare facilities, requiring rulemaking and providing for ineffective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 15, being original House Bill 35. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act number 16. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 16 being original House Bill 82. An act relating to criminal procedure, specifying that orders for examination of mentally ill criminal defendants charged with misdemeanors shall not occur at the state hospital or on an inpatient basis, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 16, being original House Bill number 82. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act number 17. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 17 being original House Bill 160. An act relating to defense forces and affairs, authorizing veterans to present their driver's licenses or identification cards as proof of their veteran status as specified, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 17, being original House Bill number 160. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Pendergraft. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act number 18. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 18 being original House Bill 147. An act relating to game and fish, amending the crime of interference with lawful taking of wildlife, prohibiting acts that restrict access to or use of state or federal land as specified, providing an exception, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act number 18, being original House Bill number 147. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Provenza. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act number 19. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 19 being original House Bill 19. An act relating to children, creating the State Indian Child Welfare Act Task Force, specifying members and duties of the task force, requiring a report, providing a termination date for the task force, providing appropriations, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 19, being original House Bill number 19. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 5. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 5 being original Senate File 13. An act relating to alcoholic beverages, amending bar and grill liquor licenses requirements, specifying sunset dates for bar and grill license population formulas, providing for rulemaking and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Enrolled Act Number 5, being original Senate File Number 13. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Act Number 6. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 6 being original Senate File 26. An act relating to professional licensing, adopting the Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, authorizing the temporary and telemedicine-based provisions of psychology services by psychologists not licensed to practice psychology in Wyoming, providing for participation in the compact, making conforming amendments, assigning duties to the Wyoming State Board of Psychology, authorizing fingerprinting and background investigation for psychology license applicants and license renewals, and providing for effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 6, being original Senate File Number 26. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 7. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 7 being original Senate File 122. An act relating to motor vehicles, extending the time of period for the temporary registration of vehicles owned by non-resident persons employed in Wyoming, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 7, being original Senate File Number 122. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 8. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 8 being original Senate File 118. An act relating to the administration of government, amending the inclusion of federal encumbrances for purposes of calculating fund balances of state funds, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 8, being original Senate File Number 118. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 9. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 9 being original Senate File 57. An act relating to public funds, repealing provisions related to specified irrigation and drainage district bonds held by the state of Wyoming, providing an appropriation, extinguishing bond obligations, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 9, being original Senate File Number 57. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 10. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 10 being original Senate File 36. An act relating to the investment of state funds, specifying procedures and deadlines for the Investment Funds Committee and the selection panel of the Investment Funds Committee, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 10, being original Senate File Number 36. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act Number 11. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 11 being original Senate File 33. An act relating to game and fish, providing a definition of aircraft for the purpose of the prohibition on the use of aircraft for hunting and other purposes as specified, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 11, being original Senate File Number 33. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 12. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 12, being original Senate File 28. An act relating to agriculture, specifying participation in livestock contagious and infectious reportable disease testing and containment programs and reimbursements to include all producers in the state, including producers on the Wind River Indian Reservation as specified, providing for cooperative agreements with the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho tribes, expanding the governor's authority to negotiate on brucellosis containment, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 12, being original Senate File number 28. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 13. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 13, being original Senate File 17. An act relating to motor vehicles, requiring specified insurance and safety equipment for off-road recreational vehicle when operating on a public road, right-of-way, street, road, or highway, providing an exception and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 13, being original Senate File number 17. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 14. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 14, being original Senate File 15. An act relating to Defense Forces and Affairs, striking the one-year employment requirement for a leave of absence for a military duty for state employees and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 14, being original Senate File number 15. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 15. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 15, being original Senate File 14. An act relating to Wyoming National Guard, extending Wyoming National Guard malpractice indemnity to other professionals serving as members of the Wyoming National Guard and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 15, being original Senate File number 14. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 16. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act 16, being original Senate File 5. An act relating to the insurance code, granting the insurance commissioner discretion to require reporting of medical malpractice claims, specifying the amount of notice to be given to insurers when reports are required, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 16, being original Senate File number 5. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 17. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 17, being original Senate File 6. An act relating to the insurance code, authorizing specified insurance rebates, clarifying language in the unfair insurance discrimination and insurance rebate statutes, authorizing rulemaking and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 17, being original Senate File number 6. I have so signed. The next Enrolled Act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 18. The reading clerk will read the Enrolled Act.
Senate Enrolled Act 18, being original Senate File 24. An act relating to banks, banking, and finance, requiring financial institutions to report financial exploitation of vulnerable adults as specified, authorizing discretionary reporting of suspected financial exploitation of vulnerable adults to third parties, allowing temporary holds on transactions, providing immunity, requiring disclosure of financial records, providing definitions, requiring rulemaking, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 18, being original Senate File number 24. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 19. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 19 being original Senate File 63, an act relating to taxation and revenue, clarifying the administration of certain taxes by the Department of Revenue, providing that the Department of Revenue may credit or waive interest related to mine product taxes, providing that any assessment or levy of sales and use taxes resulting from an audit or review shall be issued within a specified time of the audit or the review, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign in Senate Enrolled Act number 19, being original Senate File number 63. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 20. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 20 being original Senate File 59, an act relating to state lands, increasing the expenditure authority of the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources for funds in the state parks account, providing for conforming amendments, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 20, being original Senate File number 15. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 21. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 21 being original Senate File 20, an act relating to driver's licenses and identification cards, striking the requirement for the photograph on the driver's license and identification card to be in the color, authorizing rulemaking and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 21, being original Senate File number 20. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 22. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 22 being original Senate File 18, an act relating to administration of the government, amending death benefits for the Law Enforcement Retirement Plan and the State Highway Patrol, Game and Fish, Warden, and Criminal Investigator Retirement Plan, conforming provisions, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 22, being original Senate File number 18. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Enrolled Joint Resolution number 1, Senate Enrolled Joint Resolution number 1. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Joint Resolution number 1 being original Senate Joint Resolution 7, a joint resolution in support of Taiwan. Whereas Taiwan and the United States are bonded by their shared commitment to democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and free market economy. And whereas on March 5th, 1984, the state of Wyoming adopted Taiwan as Wyoming's sister state. And whereas Taiwan ranks as the United States' 8th largest trading partner, Taiwan ranks as the United States' 6th largest agricultural goods export destination, and bilateral trade between the United States and Taiwan reached an estimated $114 billion in 2021. And whereas the United States and Taiwan have welcomed the resumption of high-level trade engagement and have expressed a desire to work closely together. And whereas Taiwan ranks as the state of Wyoming's 8th largest trading partner in Asia, and both the state of Wyoming and Taiwan are committed to strengthening bilateral economic bonds. And whereas the United States Congress passed the landmark Taiwan Relation Act in 1979 to sustain a close bilateral relationship and to advance mutual security and commercial interests between the United States and Taiwan. And whereas based on the principles of the United States and the Taiwan's Education Initiative in 2020, Taiwan's Ministry of Education and the State of Wyoming's Department of Education signed a memorandum of understanding on educational cooperation in 2022 to further promote teacher and student exchanges and cultural awareness. And whereas the United States has previously assisted Taiwan in its participation in the World Health Organization, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and the International Criminal Police Organization, and the United States will continue to support Taiwan's meaningful participation in these and other international organizations. And whereas Taiwan, as a willing and contributing member of the world community, has made countless contributions of the technical and financial assistance in the wake of natural disasters worldwide. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the members of the legislature of the state of Wyoming that Section 1, that Wyoming reaffirms its commitment to the strong and deepening relationship between Taiwan and the state of Wyoming. Section 2, that Wyoming supports Taiwan's participation in internal organizations that impact the global trade, health, safety, and well-being of the 23 million people in Taiwan. Section 3, that Wyoming reiterates its support for the closer economic and trade partnership between the United States and Taiwan, includes signing the United States-Taiwan bilateral trade agreement.
Wow. I am about to sign Enrolled Joint Resolution Number 1, being original Senate Joint Resolution Number 7. I have so signed. Just an announcement on the JCCs, all the joint conference committees, for those of you that are chairman, they need to be announced on the floor, and the room that they're supposed to be held in is room 113 because they are being Zoomed. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Is that clear, the deck, Chief? Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, the 15th day of February 2023.
Committee announcements. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your joint conference committee for, I can't remember, House Bill 41 will be meeting upon adjournment, and I did not get the memo in time, so we will be meeting in PM3 upon adjournment to discuss the amendments that we disagreed to.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. I got in trouble for that one, so. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. to consider Senate File 116, Senate File 95, and Senate File 54.
Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in our regular room to hear 3 bills, Senate File 32, Senate File 35, Senate File 129.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet tomorrow at 8:45 in E3 to hear Senate File 65, Compensation of Local Registrars, and Senate File 131, Prohibition on Delivery of Unsolicited Ballot Forms.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet upon noon recess. We're going to hear Senate File 98, Education Certification of Completion.
Chairman Olson.
Committee number 7, House Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, will meet tomorrow upon noon recess in E005 to consider 2 bills, Senate File 75, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments, and Senate File 76, the Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment this evening to hear Senate File 94, Senate File 96, Senate File 138, and Senate File 66, and re-referral of 61. On noon on Wednesday, we'll have your Senate File 157, Senate File 148, and Senate File 97.
Representative Provenza, do you have a privilege of the floor?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
I just wanted to let folks know there was a fire in the university dorms this morning at real early, 1 a.m. No one is severely injured, but there was one person who had sustained minor injuries. It did displace temporarily roughly 200 students. So I'm just asking folks to have those folks in our thoughts and figure out what we can do to help in that way. But just want to let folks know that happened and give you an update once we get something.
Representative Provenza, thank you. That is sad news. Any other announcements? If not, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. The House is adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, February 15th, 2023.